What's going on, everybody? I've had this video in my vault for a while now, but I figured I'd put it out. And I figured this video would be helpful for anyone visiting Mexico for the first time, or returning to Mexico, or thinking about visiting Guadalajara. So yeah, we're going to be talking about my first impressions of Guadalajara, Mexico. As you may know, if you've seen the previous videos on my channel, I am a temporary resident of Mexico, working on becoming a permanent resident of Mexico. So I got a special relationship with Mexico right now. You know, we're pretty tight, at least immigration wise, and I really enjoy visiting Mexico. I'm considering having it as a home base. And every time I go back to Mexico, I have a great time. And when I leave, I'm a little sad that I'm leaving and hope to get back there again. I think it's a great country, a great all-around country. I think it covers a lot of things that expats want, or people that plan on living in Mexico want. From the food, obviously Mexican food is great. From the weather, the beaches, just Mexico has everything. I've been to Guadalajara, Mexico twice, so this video is gonna be a summarization of my feelings, impressions, and thoughts about Guadalajara, Mexico, and things to know. So just general first impressions. Before we start the video, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe button. It helps the channel grow and it helps me continue to provide videos like these to you. I'll start off with the weather in Guadalajara, Mexico. So I came for the first time in May, and Guadalajara, Mexico is a pretty hot place. I can't speak for all of Mexico since the weather changes depending on where you're at. But once I left that airport, I seen how hot it is and how dry the air quality is. That's something that really stood out to me, was the air quality. Guadalajara was the only place I've traveled to so far where the air was just so dry that I had to like splash water in my nostrils just to like keep my nose from drying up. It's not much humidity in the air, and it gets a little frustrating to manage if you like to play sports, do outdoor activities, and you know you're breathing in, you got to drink water, and you're also dealing with a dry nose while you're doing those things. It didn't affect my trip at all. I didn't feel like, oh, I gotta leave here, my nose is too dry or the air is too dry. It wasn't like that, but it just was like a slight annoyance while I was there. And I think as time goes on, I'll get used to it. I really liked the weather though. I liked how consistent the weather was with the heat. The heat wasn't unbearable. It was like just the right amount of heat for me. I tend to like the heat more than colder climates, so I can bear like hot temperatures more. If I'm ever anywhere cold in the world, I'm gonna consider going back to Guadalajara so I can bask in the heat and enjoy the hot weather out there. But don't get me wrong though, the temperature does change. I've seen the weather in the 60s and the 70s, so depending on the season, it does get a little cold out. So keep that in mind when you're visiting. Pay attention to the seasons, pay attention to the average weather depending on the month, and plan that all ahead when you're planning your trip to Guadalajara, because you may like the heat and you may want to be there when it's hot, or you may like when the temperature is a little temperate, you know, when it's in like the 60s or the 70s. It barely rained, so the rain was very infrequent, uncommon. And actually when it rained out, I was surprised. Like I was just getting so used to no rain that when it did rain, I thought it was like a miracle sent from God or something. And I feel like depending on who you talk to, Mexico may have a reputation of just it not raining often. Just be prepared to be there with very little rainfall during your trip. I think I just wasn't in Guadalajara during the rainy season, so that's why it wasn't so common to see rain out there during my trip. Even though Guadalajara tends to be a hotter climate, it does tend to cool down early in the morning and late at night. So if you're a morning person and you like to get things done outside, you know, before 6 or 7 o'clock, I would say to bring a hoodie or a small jacket with you. And same goes for the nighttime. If you're out really late at night, I think a light jacket or a small hoodie would work as well. Like I wouldn't return to Guadalajara without at least having a hoodie, because I know during those times of the day, if I ever have to go outside or if I'm just in my apartment and I get cold, you know, I just want to have a hoodie just in case for those early morning and late nights. Some of this footage you'll see is some car footage. I want you to visualize just me and you are just in a car having a casual conversation about Guadalajara, just, you know, small talking. And I'm just explaining to you about my experiences in Guadalajara while we're just taking a trip somewhere. So about my general views on safety. First time I came to Guadalajara, I stayed at a hotel in the Americana neighborhood. And the second time I came there and stayed a little longer, I stayed in a neighborhood called Oblatos. I generally felt safe in Guadalajara. I didn't feel like I needed to watch my back. I think you apply the same the same thoughts and tactics that you would in any city in the world to stay safe. You just apply it in Guadalajara. Guadalajara has its safe neighborhoods and its not so safe neighborhoods, and it's like in the middle neighborhoods where, depending on which streets you're on and blocks and stuff, it may be safe, it may not be. Like those neighborhoods where you just gotta be a little cautious, even though most likely nothing is gonna happen. And I think for the most part, if you're coming to live in Mexico or visit Mexico, you're not gonna end up in a bad neighborhood. I think it's hard for you to choose a dangerous neighborhood in Guadalajara. Most of the nice neighborhoods that foreigners tend to go to, you can find them out online on YouTube. They're really well known, I think, now. And I think the neighborhoods that could be questionable are towards the outskirts of the city. But anywhere closer to the city center, the center of the city, I think it's generally going to be safe. It was at least safe in my opinion. As always, be a little more cautious at night, especially depending on what neighborhood you're in as well, since things tend to be less safe at night wherever you go in the world. But yeah, if you're coming in for the first time, I think you'll be fine. Just stay in the neighborhoods that we all know or are aware of online. And if you're not and you want to be a little bit more adventurous, explore some new neighborhoods, just do your research, and I think you'll be fine. I don't think anything will happen to you. Make sure you're not using your phone when you're out and about without being aware of your surroundings. Make sure you're not standing on a corner on full display using your phone. I also would say not to wear any jewelry while you're out and about, because jewelry is nice. You may think you're attracting women wearing some nice jewelry, but you're just attracting people that want to rob you. In terms of walkability, Guadalajara is a very walkable city. It's a big city, so depending on where you're trying to get to, you might be walking for a while, but you can walk to each and every one of your destinations. You don't have to cross any major highways or big roads, which I really liked about that. Some cities you go to in Latin America and maybe the Caribbean, it's a city, but you know for sure if you're trying to get from one point of the city to the other, you just cannot walk there without risking your life trying to cross a major highway. But Guadalajara is not like that. It's like a very street-centric city where you can walk street by street to places and enjoy walking it too. Guadalajara has a lot of visual stimuli. It's a very nice city. It has a lot of different parks and plazas, a lot of nice buildings. It's just a lot of things to see in Guadalajara, which is one of the reasons it makes it a really nice city, is you can walk for 30 minutes and see a lot of different things, get a lot of different taste of the culture of Guadalajara. So I would definitely prefer to walk it if possible. They also have a bike sharing system, a bike rental system called Mi Bici, almost like City Bike. If you ever been to New York or from New York, how they got city bikes where you could rent throughout the city. So yeah, my Mi Bici, you can go to one of their stations, rent a bike, and then drop it off when you're done at whatever station you can find in the city. So you can bike Guadalajara as well. Guadalajara is interesting because it's a city, but it doesn't have that city feel. You know, it almost feels like a really big town, like a big pueblo, because it's a city and it has just as many things to do and places to see, places to go as a normal city would. But I think it's spread out enough to where you don't feel like you're like condensed into one small place. In terms of the people, my impressions was everyone that I met was super cool, friendly, helpful. Some people were surprised to see me, but in a good way, you know. I like that. Some people greeted me first, asked me for help if I needed anything. The main thing I really liked about Guadalajara is the culture, you know, the style. It's not a cookie cutter city at all, where everybody looks the same, everyone's blending in. It's no culture. It wasn't like that at all. Like everybody, I love the fact that, you know, you could see people dressing this way and then walk down the block and see someone else dressing this way. Like it had a very good sense of culture and individualism in terms of, you know, personal interests, what people are into, what they like to do. It's just a city with style. I like that. You can see the culture on display, you know, with whatever parades they have going on, food that's being sold, you know, food culture, whether it's on the street or in restaurants. The way people dress, like I said, some good, nice dressed people, sharp dressed people in Guadalajara. And of course, the traditional Mexican culture where you'll see as well. I would even relate culture to the architecture of the city. You got the historical center, you got the more business upscale places in Guadalajara, nice architecture. The food was great as well. You know, Mexican food is one of the best in the world. It was kind of hard for me to find chicken tacos for some reason. It just wasn't readily available everywhere. I made a short about this actually, a restaurant that I was just going to every day because it was so delicious and cheap for me, at least. A birria restaurant where I was getting a whole plate of food that actually filled me up for about $7 to $8. I would just go there every day. So cost of living. If you're visiting Mexico or you plan on coming to live in Mexico, be prepared to spend some money, because compared to the other Latin American countries, Mexico is a bit on the higher side in terms of rent prices, food. It's just a little bit more expensive, or I could say a lot more expensive depending on how you look at it. And the main reason, or one of the main reasons, is the Mexican peso is becoming a lot more valuable as the years go on. So your US dollar or euro or other currency is losing value against the Mexican peso as it becomes more valuable. But compared to, let's say, Panama, which is one of the most expensive, if not the most expensive country in Latin America, I still think Mexico, or let's say Guadalajara, is cheaper than Panama City. Keep that in mind. Things are very cheap in Mexico. Cheaper than the States for sure. Cheaper than Panama City, but not the cheapest compared to other Latin American neighboring countries. If you made it to the end of the video, I got a bonus first impression for you guys, mostly for the males watching this video. I've seen a lot of attractive Mexican females in Guadalajara. If you're coming from the States, you may be used to how Mexican women look in the States. And from my general experiences, at least living on the East Coast, New York City, East Coast in general, they all tend to have the same kind of look, the same kind of facial features. But I realized in Guadalajara, they all look different. Some got the indigenous look going on. Some look like they're mixed with a lot of different things. So yeah, I think you'll come across a lot of attractive females in Guadalajara. Key word is variety. It's variety in Guadalajara. The frequency of coming across attractive females in Guadalajara may not be as frequent as other countries in the region. Like let's say Colombia, everybody knows about Colombia. It's not as frequent as Colombia, but it's definitely a good amount. All right, so I'm gonna wrap up this video. Don't forget to hit the like button, hit the subscribe button if you want to see some more videos like these, and I'll catch y'all in the next video.